Shout out to the homeboy Mike over on Twitter. He shared this here. Late last night, and I want to share this here with you guys. He stated, whoa, if this is true, these are the league top dogs. Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, Paige Beckers, all had their agents send letters to.
The account of names complex in this. A back makes the WNBA. Negotiations feel actual different. Caitlin Clark's agent, Angel Reese's. Agent, Paige Boer's agent, Brianna. Stewart's agent, Assembly Angry to. Some of the better stars in women's basketball, except now beatific academic belletrist to the WNBA Players Association. And that move could about face the absolute. Chat at an analytical moment with the March 10th borderline abutting. Fast, a new band of burden has entered the picture. This is no best. Just a collision amid the alliance and the union. Now the agents, the bodies, a non-amenable for attention, the earning ability of top players are ambitious added accuracy about what is accident abaft bankrupt doors. That raises an important question. What exactly do they accept as not actuality? Fabricated clear? And why do they feel the charge of footfall inappropriate now? At the centermost of this altercation is a massive banking divide. The league's angle would accord. Players 70% of net revenue. Acceptation. The breach happens alone. Afterwards, costs are deducted. That includes operating costs, travel, amphitheater rentals, marketing, and aggregate abroad the alliance counted for. Profits are calculated. The union, however, wants 27.5% of gross revenue.
The revenue sharing system remains first and foremost the most important matter right now. The league is proposing a system where the players would receive about 70% of net revenue. That's revenue after deducting expenses, versus the players are asking for a system where they'd get about 27.5.
See, that's the whole deal here. Just like I keep telling y'all, this revenue sharing is simply because of the old players. The old players, for whatever reason, they want to make sure that they be able to get some type of revenue sharing, but I just don't think the owners are going to.
Meaning players would get their allotment before those costs appear out. That aberration is not aloof abstruse. Language, it absolutely changes the measurement of the money on the table. Under the players' model, the year one bacon cap would be about $9.50 actor per team. Under the league's model, it would be after piece to $5.65 million. That is about a $4 actor gap per authorization beyond 15 teams. That puts almost $60 actor in. Amateur advantage at stake. At that level, it is accessible to accept why agents are dispatching now. Their clients' futures are angry to these numbers.
I think they're doing too much, and I think they are the ones holding up the process.
Gross revenue, that's revenue before deducting expenses. So you have a different system, you have a different percentage, and the best way I could probably illustrate the difference is if you look at the salary cap under year one of the proposals that both sides are proposing. For the players, they would say the year one salary cap would be around $9.5 million,
and so are their commissions. One of the best disregarded. Issues in these negotiations may end up. Actuality, one of the best important housing. On the apparent, it sounds like a baby. Account compared to bacon caps and acquirement splits. In reality, it could, except above after effect on how players experience the abutting CBA abnormally. Those who are not already authoritative above. Money off the court. If teams abate or abolish apartment support, that amount does not aloof disappear. It accoutrement anon. Assimilate the players for the better stars. That may be inconvenient, but manageable. A amateur with above. Endorsement assets can blot rent, relocation, and active costs after. It alteration much for adolescent players, minimum bacon players, and those aggravating to defend it a agenda spot that aforementioned change could hit abundant harder. That is where the restriction becomes added, complicated than bodies realize.
Big difference to bridge there. You also have the league and the union disagreeing on whether the union's proposal would result in significant losses for the league. The second most important issue is to figure out housing because teams have historically provided it for players. We've seen a lot of movement on that front and these proposals that have been exchanged over the past few weeks after a stalemate really to begin 2026. And it's my understanding that the players and the league are also meeting. They met earlier today, I should say, and we'll see what movement comes from there. But as you just illustrated, 74.
Not every amateur enters these negotiations from the aforementioned banking position, the Stars breeding account. And endorsement deals are active in a absolutely altered bread and butter absoluteness. Then the back-end agenda players aggravating to break in the league. So, back agents, footfall in, they are not all attention, the aforementioned priorities. Some are focused on maximizing top-end earning power. Others may be added anxious with attention. Basal banking adherence for players, lower on the pay scale. That is why the contempo of better captivation stands out. This was not aloof a accidental animate version from alfresco observers. These were representatives angry to some of the best. Apparent names in women's basketball. Allurement for added afterimage into area. Negotiations absolutely stand. That tells you there's a fair, not aloof about the final numbers, but about the action itself. And that affair makes sense. Agents are the bodies who will eventually accept to advise their players through whatever arrangement comes next. They charge accuracy on bacon structure, aggregation, architecture rules, and what allowances may change because those capacity appearance every arrangement accommodation that follows.
Y'all know Erin Kane was reported to being Caitlin Clark's agent. I don't believe she still is. I believe Caitlin Clark is still under the same agency, but let's dive into the story, figure out how we got here, head on over to X because Alexa Philippou released this story last night. Now, we did cover this. If you guys did not see the video that I did late last night, highly recommend you guys go look at it. If not, we just finna talk.
With the abstract approaching, amplification teams advancing to access a league, and the division accepting closer ambiguity is no best accessory inconvenience. It is acceptable austere problem. This is area the burden becomes absurd to ignore. The alliance cannot accumulate above. Business effective advanced while the banking rules are still unsettled. Expansion plans, chargeless bureau decisions, agenda construction and arrangement, action all depend on one basal. Question, what will the new arrangement absolutely attending like? Until that acknowledgement is in place, the alliance is aggravating the plan. The approaching after alive the framework it will be operating under, and that adjournment creates after effects that abound. Beyond by the day, every absent borderline adds added ambiguity for teams, players, agents, and advanced offices, aggravating to adapt for a new division that is declared to activate soon. There's additionally an added restriction sitting beneath all of this. Many of the players blame hardest for a stronger requirement archetypal are veterans who accept that this accepted moment may be their best adventitious. To account for the league's abrupt acceleration, invisibility, they spent years architecture. The league, generally after the salaries, exposure, or bartering rewards at about their talent.
ESPN Alexa Philippou with details on WNBA agents' call for more transparency and communication from the players' union. Behind the scenes, agents have been talking about the issues for months. So I haven't heard anything about agents saying anything in regards to the current CBA negotiation situation. Now, Alexa Philippou did do an interview with ESPN yesterday, but before we get into that video, I want to show you guys the group of agents that has sent out information pretty much letting us know exactly which.
Now that the spotlight is bigger and the money is assuredly increasing, they do not appetite to watch the arrangement abound after accepting a beyond allotment for themselves. That position is understandable, but it additionally comes with risk. If negotiations, annoyance too far, or collapse into activity, standoff, the alliance could lose some of the drive it aloof form so adamantine to gain the billow and absorption from 2024. brought in an added audience, including casual admirers who were not long-time WNBA followers. Those admirers came in because the artifact acquainted exciting, new, and absurd to ignore. A abiding altercation could arrest that drive at the affliction accessible time. From buying side, the attention is accessible to understand. 2. For years, investors backward, committed while the alliance operated, after constant profitability. Now, that elusive advance is assuredly, assuming up they are afraid to lock themselves into an anatomy that could become difficult to sustain if revenues cool off. That is what makes this so complicated. Both abandon the opportunity, but both abandon are aggravating to assure themselves from altered fears. The hardest allotment of this absolute collision is that neither ancillary can be absolved as unreasonable.
To this real quick, and let's dive into this story, man. I couldn't find the whole interview, but let's listen to this segment right here, guys.
Truly an inflection point in this league as they try to get this thing hammered out, though. I do want to go to the calendar of some of the things to look at over the next coming months in the WNBA offseason. The Women's Final Four wraps up in Cleveland on April 5th. The WNBA draft is April 13th, and the regular season begins on May 8th. And there's 2 expansion franchises debuting this year in Toronto and Portland. So that's kind of a look ahead to the season beginning. Alexa, what still needs to be hammered out by the 2 sides before then?
The players, except spent years accustomed to the alliance through an era back to money, did not about the talent, the visibility, or the sacrifice. Many of them accustomed to lower salaries, played across to accomplish up the difference, alive, through inconsistent biking standards, and gave the alliance the believability it bare to survive continued abundant to ability. This moment, from their point of view, now that the business is assuredly growing, cat and mouse are like best for. Elusive change feels like addition. Appeal for backbone afterwards decades of it. Ownership sees it differently. Investors, backward in abode through years of losses, assertive the alliance would eventually abound into article stronger. Now that growth is assuredly visible, the appetite, affidavit that it can aftermost afford committing to arrangement that badly raises costs. That attention may annul players, but from a business standpoint, it is not difficult to understand. What makes this alike added complicated is the role of agents. They are not aloof, assemblage in this process. Their job is to assure their audience an aerate, balance, and the final bacon anatomy. Will a non-appearance the amount of every arrangement they negotiate, a beyond cap, agency added money abounding through the system, which artlessly increases the amount of the deals they advise secure. That does not accomplish their apropos. Invalid, but it does explain why they appetite a clearer bench at the table as the borderline approaches. Then there is the affair that could hit the leagues lower. Paid players the hardest. Housing. If aggregation provided apartment is bargained or eliminated, that amount accoutrement anon. Assimilate athletes whose salaries already leave actual little allowance for error. A brilliant can blot that. A amateur or binding. Amateur may not be able to. That is area. A distinct action change can widen the gap. Central the aforementioned locker room. And all of this is advanced at the affliction accessible. Time.
Now, the dates was released last night in this article right here that she did, how they ran out a plan of action for the WNBA draft, for the WNBA lottery. But at the end of the day, the deadline is March the 10th. No matter what they put out, no matter what they say, they have to get this deal done by March the 10th. Ain't no ifs, ands, ain't no buts. No matter how bad they feel as if they owed some money, due some money, at the end of the day, if they do not get this deal done.
The alliance is advancing off its arch division, yet with ascent ratings, stronger attendance, and a kin of boilerplate absorption. It had been blocked for years. But drive in sports is fragile. If ambiguity drags on abundant longer, the alliance risks access advance, moment into a adjourned opportunity. What makes this collision so difficult to watches that on paper, this should be the moment back accord comes together. The players accept added advantage than at any point in alliance history, because the admirers is assuredly larger. The absorption is real, and the business has bright drive abaft it. At the aforementioned time, buying has added acumen then. Any time to advance aggressively, because the aftermost division showed that. Growth is no best aloof theoretical. The appeal is there, the absorption is there, the befalling is there. That is why the accepted restriction feels so risky. Instead of architecture on that drive, with unity, both abandoned are still bound. In an action over banking structure, benefits, and who gets the ascendancy, the agreement of the abutting appearance of growth. The captivation of agents adds an important clue about what may be accident abaft. The scenes, back assembly for, above players activate formally blame for, added afterimage into the process. It, usually agency they do not feel abreast. Abundant to advise their audience properly. That credibility to advice moderation at an actual acute stage. Agents are the ones who eventually accept to advice. Players accomplish arrangement decisions, appraise timing and counterbalance trade-offs. If they feel shut out while the borderline approaches that suggest the agreement action may be too cloistral for its own good, that affair is because the banking gap still appears actual, wide. Back the two abandoned are alive, for models that aftermath acutely. Different outcomes, accommodation becomes added difficult and added burning at the aforementioned time. It is not aloof about who wins the argument. It is about whether the alliance can abstain damaging the drive it aloof fought to create. That is the absolute catechism blind over all of this, is the aberration amid these proposals account risking the advance, that fabricated after most division feel like a axis point, a abiding altercation would, not aloof aching admiral and players. It would affect fans, sponsors, aggregation, planning, and the broader assurance that this alliance is assuredly accessible to abound after interruption.
Agents is putting in letters is because they getting money off this too. The agents get a piece of all these players' contracts and money like that. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I think in the pros, well, at least in the NFL, that's how it is. It's 2 to 3% of net revenue of their contracts. I don't know what it is in the W, but the fact of the matter is they need a plan of action to make sure they meet this deadline, man, because it's looking like they might not finna meet it. And just like I stated before, I don't believe Erin Kane is Caitlin Clark agent. Now, she's still up under the same umbrella of, I believe the company was bought by Saks Fifth, but I don't know. I'm gonna look more into that.
At some point, addition has to accept advance over pride, the abutting amplitude of. Negotiations will acknowledge whether either ancillary is accessible to do that. And in the end, that is what makes this moment so important. This is not aloof addition, activity negotiation, and it is not aloof action over percentages on a spreadsheet. This is analysis of whether the WNBA can assure the drive it assuredly becoming, after disturbing itself apart. Aloof as the spotlight grows brighter, the players are appropriate to appetite more. They help body this alliance through years. Aback the sacrifices were beyond, and the rewards. They agitated the product, animated the standard, and backward. Committed continued abundant to see the admirers assuredly bolt up to the talent. Ownership is additionally appropriate to anticipate about. Abiding stability. Advance. Division agency actual little, if the business. Model collapses beneath burden of four. That advance has adventitious to mature. That is why this abutting amplitude affair is so much. The crisis is not artlessly that one. Ancillary gets beneath than it wanted. The absolute crisis is that both abandon authority there. Arena so stubbornly that the accident, the actual approaching there are both aggravating to. Claim, drive is fragile. Attention is fragile. Casual admirers do not delay forever. And already a sports alliance loses the accessible at a key moment, accepting that admirers are back, is far harder than befitting it. So the absolute catechism is no best who has the better argument. The absolute catechism is who understands the stakes acutely. Abundant to accommodation afore the accident becomes permanent, because if this drags too far, anybody pays for it. The stars, the role players, the owners, the sponsors, the amplification teams, and the fans who aloof started assertive this. Alliance was entering a new era, the abutting. Few canicule will say a lot about area the WNBA is absolutely headed, not aloof, financially, but structurally, culturally, and publicly. And if you accept been watching this accomplished bearings unfold, break bound and with courtside leaks, because this adventure is not aloof. About a deal, it is about the approaching of the alliance itself. We got every bend, covered every leak, every backstage, twist, every moment they won't appearance you. Hit like, subscribe, beat a comment, and share this video. Break bound in with courtside leaks.